After 3 days without hearing from or seeing their neighbors, the neighbors alerted the police, suspecting something could have gone wrong. However, a 3-year-old girl was carrying her 2-month-old brother when they opened the door before they even got there. "My mommy and daddy died," she said. This tale breaks my heart. Although some people believe that childhood is the most lovely time in life, David Parsa felt that it was a stage he could skip. Welcome to USA Stories channel. Do not forget to subscribe and activate the bell button to receive all new updates. Now let's go to the story. He didn't know what a happy family looked like when he was growing up. He had never experienced the affection of a mother or father. He frequently questioned why his parents were so unlike from those of his peers. How come they never went out together? Why were they acting so strangely? Although David's 6th birthday was one of the most wonderful days of his youth, it was also the day he sensed something wasn't right. It was the first time his family had all been together in the living room. David's father, who was suffering from borderline personality disorder, merely sat there and stared blankly as his mother sung a birthday song. David was merely relieved that his father was there, but he didn't mind. Excitedly blowing out the candles on his birthday cake, David's father sprang up and shouted at him to stop. David shivered violently every time his father yelled at him, even though he had lost track of the times the guy had done so. Suddenly, his father took the cake and smashed it against the wall. "We shouldn't celebrate birthdays. What makes life so lovely?" "Why are you grinning?" his father yelled. David's mother, Lauren, took hold of his hands as soon as his father had done this and dragged him to his room. Then she closed the blinds and turned out the lights. "Whatever occurs, stay inside. Simply remain here," she urged. However, a loud tap on the door interrupted her before she could say anything more. David then heard his father say, "Where are you? Lauren, come out here." His mother fled, and he later overheard his parents arguing angrily. Then several objects, including the TV, chair, and frames, started to fly around. David could hear his mother sobbing and yelling as well. This continued for perhaps 20 minutes, after which there was complete quiet everywhere. When David did emerge from his room later that night, he found his father crying in a corner. Though he was afraid his dad would yell at him, he wanted to ask him where his mom was. His father was often shouting at them when they talked. Later that evening, David went to bed early while sobbing, but he was awakened at 8 p.m. by someone breaking into his room. It was the older sister of his mom. They left the home when she took hold of his hands. "How about Dad? That is not how we can let him go." The young child shouted, "Where's Mom?" But his aunt ignored him. David remained with his aunt for the following 5 years, during which time he endured a barrage of horrible mistreatment. He lived in a lonely and depressing environment and never had any communication from his parents. David met Cynthia while residing at his aunt's house, and the two of them quickly became close friends. One morning, after David's friends had tormented him at school, Cynthia promised him, "I would never leave your side and I will always be your friend." When David's mother unexpectedly appeared at his aunt's door one morning, he was 11 years old. For an instant, David was completely persuaded that his mother was a ghost, even though he had always thought ghosts were only real in stories. After years of leaving him behind, how on earth could she just now appear? David wanted to tell his mother so much. He wanted to question her whereabouts and why she'd departed, but he held his tongue. He was unable to even spend a day without thinking about her during this entire time. And yet here she was too big for him to touch, too little for her to hug him. When they got back to the family home that evening, David was shocked to discover his father was still there. The man looked quite ill and had lost a lot of weight, but a lady was taking care of him. The first week was quiet in the house until the fights began. David's mother burst into his room 6 months later saying, "I can't take it anymore. I'm going to flee once more. I apologize for my past departure from you. If we remain any longer, your dad will hurt us, so please pack your luggage and let's go." David, however, was unable to abandon his father, so he urged his mother to go, and she departed without turning around. His last memory of her was from that moment on, and David had to take care of himself. He persevered by working many low jobs and keeping Cynthia at his side. After graduating from college, David proposed to Cynthia, who graciously accepted his proposal. To his astonishment, though, she gave back the ring a week later, claiming that her parents disapproved of the union. David quit battling at this point and turned into a shell of his former self. He believed that his life had reached its end. He had a solitary life and avoided partnerships. David never went to see his father, who was finally placed in a retirement community. He detested and held his father responsible for severing his relationship with his mother. After so much pressure and being made fun of for being single, David finally caved into the idea of getting married when he turned 40. He later married 34-year-old Mihoko after meeting her. Even though she was aware of David's depression, she still loved him. She was gravely mistaken in her belief that she could care for him. David seldom talked about his painful upbringing or his suppressed emotions, so she didn't know anything about them. They had problems from the night of the wedding. David would frequently lose it and demand Mihoko to go. "You will never be able to replace Cynthia." But Mihoko only liked him when he was in a good mood, which wasn't often. In addition to cooking and reading her stories, he would also comb her hair. Subsequently, he would shut himself in and continue conversing with himself. Mihoko understood deep down that David had a kind person. Sadly, life handed him a bigger blow than he could have handled. Additionally, Mihoko attempted to get David to use drugs, but this just made matters worse as he would treat her horribly. Later, Mihoko believed that having children they had Adriana, their first child, to help with David's illness. Regretfully, things continued to become worse. David became distant from his daughter because he believed he was a weak father. All he could think about was how his connection with the girl was like his bad one with his father. As soon as matters deteriorated, David lost his job, leaving Mihoko to shoulder the financial burden. She still loved her spouse and children in spite of everything. David would yell at Mihoko and tell her she was horrible for the child every time his mood soured. "Are you going to simply run away like my mom when you get tired of all this? Is it not evident to you that you will never be able to bring your child happiness?" Adriana was lovingly reared by Mihoko in spite of everything. She would teach her the value of forgiveness and love every morning and evening. Thankfully, tiny Adriana comprehended everything. They welcomed a kid called Simeon into their family 3 years later. Following his arrival, David's health deteriorated. David was afraid he was rearing a different version of his father, since Simeon had a striking resemblance to his grandfather. Mihoko persisted in her attempts to get David to take medicine and consult a doctor, but he informed her that she was the one experiencing mental health issues and that assistance was necessary. Regretfully, catastrophe happened quite quickly. When David ultimately decided to give up, Simeon was just 2 months old. He killed his wife in the bedroom one morning and then committed suicide himself. Adriana was confined to her home with her 2-month-old brother for the next 3 days. This little girl looked after her younger brother. She ate some food she found in the refrigerator and gave him some baby food. When the neighbors didn't see this family leave the residence after 3 days, they became suspicious. When no one responded when they knocked on the door, they proceeded to the home, summoned a locksmith, and broke in. As soon as they entered, they noticed Adriana hugging her brother. Then she said, "My parents passed away." While the other neighbors gave the children a thorough wash, ample food, and drink, one neighbor called the police right away. The children were finally placed under the supervision of child welfare officials and subsequently adopted by the mother's family. Though I'm sorry the children had to endure this, I'm relieved that Mihoko was able to impart to her daughter the value of forgiveness and love before to her passing. Given how well Adriana cared for her brother, I think these two will do well in life, even though their parents' relationship wasn't the best. It's wonderful to see that something so lovely and pure was still produced. One family observed, "Adriana and her brother are inseparable. They love and protect each other beyond words can describe." How do you feel about this story? Tell us in the comments section below. I appreciate you seeing. I'll see you later. Please remember to subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our videos. If you enjoyed the tale, the next video that plays on your screen will probably move you too.